Hi, I'm your host, Rick Sessinghaus, and excited to launch Flow Golf Podcast. Each episode, we will share stories, interview experts, and share cutting-edge strategies for peak performance. Here's my co-host, Hallam Morgan, to explain more about Flow Code Golf.
Thanks, Rick. Flow Code Golf is a framework of strategies, principles, and techniques that take us from fear to the state of flow, the state of optimal performance, and the zone where we play our best golf. You can find out more about Flow Code Golf at www.flowcode.golf. And I just want to finish up by saying this podcast is as much your podcast as it is ours. So please ask questions, provide feedback, and get engaged. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Welcome back, all listeners, to another episode of the Flow Golf Podcast. Rick, I want to talk about competitiveness today. I think it's something that's talked about a lot, but something that probably divides quite a few people's opinions. But we know and we talk about it being an important flow trigger. So I want to hear your opinion on competitiveness and whether it's a valuable resource or skill that people can utilize in order to improve performance and also improve just their general life.
Yeah, and I think competitiveness is linked to I want to win, which inherently I think is a good thing. We want to have clear goals. We want them to be challenging. We want them to push you. So inherently that is a flow trigger, by the way, having a clear goal that is challenging. Awesome. I think what people have kind of misunderstood is that if I go out to want to win a golf tournament, I'm playing against somebody. Yeah, I get that, but it's really, you want to get the best version of yourself. You're competing against yourself of what's the best version of myself that's going to show up under pressure and show up to possibly win. I don't want people to shy away from competitiveness. I think sometimes people think competitiveness means you're comparing with somebody, and I'm okay with that. And I know that's a totally different environment, but I grew up in a very sports-minded household. My dad was a football coach. You always are getting compared to make your skills better. Hey, Rick, your footwork wasn't good enough here. Look at, back in the day, I don't know, I forget, Joe Montana, right? Yeah, that's dating myself with a football player. Look at his footwork, right? I'm comparing myself to the best of the best because I want to improve my skills. I think people, when they think comparison means, oh, I'm just not as good as them, and oh, I'm never going to get as good as them. It's like, no. We use it actually as a trigger for growth mindset to go, oh, that part I can get better at. I remember as a golfer, I was 16 years old. I remember to this day, I was a very average junior golfer, but one of the pros there, I was working at a golf course, showed me a flop shot for the first time. And I'm going, holy smokes. One, I didn't even know that existed. Okay. Now this person's hitting this high, soft shot unbelievably well. I go, I want to do that. Now, I'm comparing myself because I don't know how to do it. That person's doing. I compare. There's a performance gap. Okay. So I can't say, well, they're just so much better than me, I'm never going to get it. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a fixed mindset. Good luck with life now. But if I say, wow, that's something that I don't have, that's a skill I don't have, but I want to learn it. Oh my gosh. And I remember spending all summer learning a flop shot. And man, did I skull some shots, and I hit some chunk shots, and then I hit some beautiful shots. So now I took what was me competing against myself going, wait, there's a gap there that I can fill. There's something I can get better at. There's something that's me competing to be a better golfer. I need that skill, and I'm learning it from somebody else. I'm comparing like, wow, that person does it really, really well. Throughout history, you see what Tiger Woods has done. He elevated everybody's skill sets because they go, holy crap, he's doing things much better than I am. I better push the limits. I better get into the gym. I better do these things. So comparison can be a very healthy thing as long as you know you can do something about it. Okay. Absolutely. So competitiveness is every single day, I want to be a better version of myself, and I'm going to compete against myself. Why? Yeah, maybe I want to win something and I'm competing with other people and I'm going to the same goal. Fantastic. But we want to keep pushing your performance, and how you do that is you honestly have to be saying, hey, I'm not as good as I need to be for this to get that to that goal of winning.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And I think the key distinguisher here is that if your guiding light, if the main thing you're focused on is creating the best version of yourself, then actually you competing with, not against others, or actually comparing against others as well is actually just a part of you creating a better version of yourself. I think the problem that a lot of people have, or the challenge a lot of people have, is that they see that competition against someone else as their guiding thing. I need to beat them, and that's the main thing I'm focused on. I need to win this tournament. That's the main thing I'm focused on. Whereas actually the main thing should be, I want to create the best version of myself. And I see my competition with the people around me as an opportunity for me to get closer towards that best version. I mean, we see it in so many different sports, right? We look at maybe tennis recent, and to date this, we're kind of back end of September 2022. And I know Roger Federer has just retired from tennis. And we saw the emotions between Nadal and Federer when he retired in their final kind of doubles match that they played together. But I know that if you interview either of them, the reason there's so much emotion there is because they both know that neither of them would be the level of tennis player if the other one hadn't been competing with them. And that's what I think is so powerful when you look at top level athletes, is that they don't look at that kind of, I have to beat them and that's all that I'm focused on. They're looking at becoming the best version, and they know that that other athlete is a kind of resource or an opportunity to create a better version of themselves. So I think that's so important for people to understand. And the only way you're going to do that, and you mentioned it, Rick, is to approach competition with a curious mindset rather than a critical one. If you go into competition and you see what others are doing and you go, interesting, okay, I'm not able to do that yet, or that was impressive, I wish I could do that. You come in with a curious perspective. It's so different to looking at them hit a shot and go, why can't I hit that? Oh, why am I'm not good enough? Why am I not doing that yet? Why am I? And asking those questions is so different. And that's what creates that negative comparison versus what we would call probably that positive comparison. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Flow Golf Podcast. Whether you're a coach or a golfer, we have something for everyone at Flow Code Golf Academy. I'm so excited to announce that Rick Sessinghaus has launched 2 new masterclasses that you can access for free. One for a coach on how to grow your coaching business, and another for golfers on how to master your mental game. To gain free access, you just need to head to www.flowcode.golf/masterclasses. We look forward to welcoming you to the Flow Code family.
Definitely. And again, I think I'm curious by nature. So even with coaches, like I'll go to coaching summits and stuff like that, and I'll get this new information and go, wow, that's going to help me. I had a gap in my coaching, whether it was information or how you perceive it or how you deliver it, where I want everybody to keep up leveling their skills. I have learned from other people. Part of that is comparison. Wow, they do this differently than I do it. I think their version's better than mine. I'm gonna take that, right? I'm gonna steal it, right? And there's stories upon stories. Kobe Bryant we'll call it stealing stuff from Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan stealing from Dr. J, Julius Erving. Great, it's an evolution, but guess what? Everybody keeps upticking better, better, better. The one thing that I wanted to talk about competitiveness that I think is being lost is we do look at wanting to win a tournament, which inherently is fine, but not enough people are wanting to win that shot and be the best version of themselves for this specific moment. Win this moment, win this shot, I think is overlooked because the goal of winning a tournament, which is maybe 2-3 days, it gets lost instead of, wait, you want to be competitive? Win this shot. Be the best first. See that shot with clarity. Hit that. That to me is where we talk about flow personality, is we know flow follows focus. And if I'm completely immersed in that moment, completely engaged and intentional with that shot, I'm winning. I am, because I am fully in that moment. Now, that shot might go to 2 feet, might go to 40 feet, fine. But in that moment, I'm winning that moment.
Absolutely. No, I mean, if we talk about competitiveness being a flow trigger, right? But it can only be a flow trigger if you're focused on what's in that present moment. So if you're competitive about the golf tournament, you're already into the future. Whereas if you're competitive with that shot that's right in front of you, ultimately you're in the present moment and you're stepping into flow. So I think that's such an important thing to remember. Just going back to, and I want to share a story because it just popped into my mind, but I remember having a conversation with Paul Lawrie, and Paul Lawrie sharing a conversation that he had, or a situation he faced when he was playing, just started on the European tour that it was back then, obviously now DP World Tour, and him and his friend, and I can't remember who he's with, I think it was Gary Orr, They were sat on a bench, and Sevi was hitting some bunker shots just behind them. And they were looking at him. They were like, wow. They were watching him hit these bunker shots, and they couldn't believe it. And Paul actually had the guts to say, Gary, I'm going to go and ask him. I'm going to go and ask him how he's doing it. Walked up, asked him the questions. And I remember Paul saying to me, and he's a bit older now, and he said, I still use that same information that Sevi gave me. I still use it to this day. And the problem is that so many people would look at Sevi and go, oh, why can't I hit bunker shots like that? Oh, I'm not good enough to hit bunker shots like that. Critical. Paul took a curious perspective. You know what? I'm going to go and ask him, how does he play that shot? Because I know that that's going to be useful resource, useful information for me to create my next best version. And that, I think, is exactly, it's the perfect story to explain what we talked about, where our guiding light needs to be, can you become the best version of yourself? And essentially, the people around you, your competitors, can become resources. Maybe sounds a bit mean, but they can become resources to create that best version of yourself. And I think that's so powerful to remember.
Yeah, and just to kind of go back to the start of the conversation, is competitiveness in itself for a future event is fine, everybody. It does spark discipline, it sparks motivation, it sparks work ethic, because we have this goal that we're really pursuing. That's wonderful, and I would continue to want to push yourself for long-term goals, short-term goals, but now in the moment goals. And I think when we bring competitiveness, there is a different intensity, which is, again, great. But again, where's the intensity being driven towards? And we wanted to drive it towards the present moment. We want to use that spark to help us pay attention to what's going on in that moment. So competitiveness long-term, wonderful. I think that helps us with long-term discipline and habits and stuff that we've talked about on other podcasts. But really, taking that same intensity to a shot-by-shot basis is a skill.
Absolutely. And just from a coach, because we may have some coaches listening to this, Rick, I know one of your kind of key coaching philosophies is to take the golfer out onto the golf course. And I know another big part is that you compete with them sometimes, right? Like you say, like, right, end of the session, like, let's go. So can you talk a bit about that? Because I think we've spoke about competitiveness from the golfer's standpoint, but I also think from a coach standpoint, we need to understand that competitiveness can be so valuable in bringing focus into the present moment. And we can do that through various ways in sessions.
Yeah, so bringing competition within a coaching session, one is a lot of fun for me as a coach. So one, I'm very engaged, right? And I always find it interesting of when for the first time, let's say, I have, of course, students I work with every week, and they know I'm going to compete against them. But that first time where I have a new student and I say, hey, you and I are going to compete. And what their first reaction is very important. It's very telling. So I've had, and I work with a lot of competitive juniors. So let's say I have a 16-year-old. They're a good player. And I say, hey, we're going to compete closest to the hole. Now I have had some that go, that's not fair. You're a professional. Da, 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 da. And I go, oh, crap. This is not good, because they're not embracing the challenge. They're not being competitive. Then I have other people go, okay, old man, I'm going to knock it closer than you. And I go, great. I got somebody who's got some trash talking. I got somebody who wants to beat me. To me, that shows me, how are you embracing the competitive side? Because you're going to go out and play in a tournament, and you're going to have somebody who makes 3 birdies in a row. And you're going to have somebody where you see your leaderboard, you're going down, you make a couple bogeys. Being competitive is still wanting to be in that situation. So part of competition for me in coaching is, one, to see what their attitude is about it in the first place. Then I certainly want to see how they compete and how they perform. Maybe they actually, most of them enhance their performance, by the way, everybody, is that they go, great, this now matters. This means something. I'm going to pay attention more. And I go, that's great, but you need to take that same intensity to more shots day in and day out. And so I use it as a learning tool also, is that if they play really, really well in this competition, I then want to link and anchor that state so they use it more often. And I want them to embrace, like, great, I'm ready for this and stuff. So I love competing for many, many, many reasons. And then sometimes I actually win, and I feel good about myself too.
There we go. But your self-esteem's not built upon results, right, Rick? Not purely off of results. So there we go. But no, I mean, it's so important. I know, kind of part of our flow code framework, we talk about 4 different flow channels. We talk about cognitive, we talk about sensory, we talk about environmental, but the final one we speak about is social flow. And a key part of social flow is balanced group challenge and ensuring that we are competing. That competitiveness can help us create a flow environment within various people. So I think it's so important to understand the value of it and not to kind of diminish it because of this potential negative comparison that can be created if we approach it with the wrong mindset. So whenever if you catch yourself and you find yourself getting critical about where you are compared to others, just remind yourself to flip to curious and to start asking questions about how you can utilize the information you're seeing, i.e. what other people are doing, to create that next best version of yourself. And that way it can become so much more valuable rather than detrimental.
Exactly. And I think the last piece that I'll say is that competitiveness in a flow state is we are constantly wanting to challenge somebody a little bit more and a little bit more. So when you set up your practice sessions, or maybe you're competing against somebody in a practice session, start to just escalate the challenge a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. It will push your skill sets now, right? And we're pushing our boundaries there. But sometimes in a coaching session, I will purposely create too big of a challenge for somebody, which may create anxiety, may create worry. I want to say, okay, how are we going to handle this, right? So that's something that I know you and I will talk about in the future, is practice and challenge versus skills balance and so on and so forth. But basic challenge versus skills is taking on a challenge and then believing you have the skills to match that. And I think the best way to do that is in a competitive mindset.
Definitely. Well, that's another episode done. Thank you all for listening. A really interesting one, and excited for the next one that we decide to cover. Cheers. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Flow Golf Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe. And as always, please reach out if you have any feedback or suggestions that we can implement to bring more value to our community. Community plays a huge role in what we do at Flow Code Golf Academy, and we're passionate about creating a group of like-minded coaches and golfers who want to improve their mental game and help others do the same. I'm also excited to announce that Dr. Rick Sessinghaus has launched 2 new masterclasses that you can gain free access to. He's created one for coaches on how to grow your coaching business, and another for golfers on how to master your mental game. You can gain free access now by heading to www.flowcode.golf/masterclasses, and we look forward to welcoming you to the Flow Code family.